Welcome to the Conscious Radio Network's YouTube channel. Become enlightened, have fun, and tell all your friends and family to share with everyone they know. You can find us on Facebook and stay up to date on our Facebook group, or find us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Our podcast can be found on Libsyn, iHeart, Spotify, Google Podcast, and more. Most of all, remember to go to our official website at consciousradionetwork.com for podcasts, posts, future shows, and scheduling. We also want to welcome our international audience. Don't stop now and join the community. Subscribe today.
This is the Conscious Radio Network.
Good morning, afternoon, or evening. Welcome to the spaceship we call Earth. Welcome to Conscious Radio Network's live podcast series, The Weekly Seance. I'm your host, Reverend Dr. Paul Mekas. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, the YouTube channel. Like, share, and comment. Now, for a quick word from our sponsor. Come on, go to the screen. There we go. Are you looking for a fascinating and compelling read? Check out My Journey as a Gray Hybrid by Gloria Haas. It covers many of the patterns of contact from extraterrestrial and is a significant disclosure of the reality we are not alone, but part of this cosmic family. It's a disclosure from the ground up. My Journey as a Gray Hybrid is available on Amazon in Kindle, paperback, and hardcover formats. Go to Amazon Books and search this book from Gloria Haas. Now, let's jump right on in here. So, let's awaken to the freedom of our sacred selves. Do you have stuck energy, child trauma, past life, ancestral, karmic, limiting beliefs? Join us this evening, Nickie-Jean, an intuitive and spiritual guide coach or guidance coach. We'll discuss her work and how to clear these blocks. Let's welcome to this evening, Nikki. How you doing? Welcome.
Hi. I didn't realize I was going to get like a whole waft of applause. It's like, whoa, hey, here I am.
Right. And you are our and this is an international show because you are dialing in. I would say dialing in, but we are broadcasting you from New Zealand. Is that correct?
Yeah, in your future.
Yes, you are 17 hours into the future.
I really am. Hi, how are you?
I'm pretty good. So explain kind of work that you do and the modalities that you use in your coaching approach into clearing this and getting people past this I guess trauma and stuff like that. How did that all start for you?
Well, I have had my whole life, like there has been spiritual experiences, even from childhood, that I couldn't articulate because I didn't know what it was or how to explain it, or I just thought it was just for me. So I remember I would have been about 8 or 9, and we lived in the middle of nowhere on a farm, and there were no neighbors for miles. And I remember sending my dad out into the middle of the night because I thought I saw something like on the bathroom door.
Yeah.
And he was all like, on a farm, there's nothing there.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm sure there's something there. So I had all these experiences as a child, but I've also had these very deep human suffering experiences that my life has ended up a bit like a movie script. And it has just very much to the point where there's been a lot of grief. There's been a lot of my own mental unwellness from as a teen, and even emotional overeating, like probably twice the size. I don't know in pounds, but a
Yeah.
lot bigger than this. And just this, very away from the truth of me and outside of myself, and lots of big grief and points in my life I couldn't even look in the mirror because I thought I was not even worthy of that. And so, but then I've always had this intuitive belief in me, which has taken like, just go and do this, like this guidance to just go and do. And I love pushing myself, pushing my own boundaries, coming like traveling overseas on a whim kind of thing, being away for nearly a year, just following that divine guidance and really doing things that push myself as and seeing things as an opportunity. And it doesn't, like, one big bad thing doesn't make it like that's it, you're one and done. Like, it's just, I've been through a few dark nights of the soul, and the more I have surrendered into those spaces, the more I've come into a deep excavation of letting go. And probably one of the most amazing things that I did Gabor Mate's Compassionate Inquiry course, and that was a year long, basically, of learning about shadow work. So you had to be the client and the therapist at the same, like, take turns. And that was really going into the spaces of stuck childhood trauma, which is stuck energy. But what I was naturally doing was going beyond into past lives, ancestral. And so it really is, I love researching stuff. So it really is like where I've gone into research, and then I've made things my own and modalities my own, and really lined up with what feels true in my heart and come into that authenticity. And I'm constantly doing, like, I'm in the rise and fall of anything that I'm going through. So last weekend, I'm still going through this kind of like expansion with all of the energies at the moment. I feel the collective deeply, and it's really honoring all of those spaces so that whenever I'm triggered or I'm feeling, it can be in your body or it can be something someone says and you're highly reactive. It's just very much, I go within every time. That's my work to do. I honor that space. And what happens is that when you go within in your shadows, like this is spirituality for me, because it's the wholeness of you. It's the unseen parts that you've hidden from, that you've run away from, that you've been scared of. And I go into, and I support clients that go right into the eye of the store of that, where the nucleus of that is, and acknowledge that and validate it and reparent that and hold that space. And the emotion that is stuck with that goes as well. And the lightness, the freedom, the epiphanies that come through. And it's like a reclamation of your sovereignty, but it also at the same time, you are remembering who you are, of where you've dropped yourself off in that space. So you're reclaiming these soul gifts and this expansion, and then you kind of integrate in that energy. And then the next trigger comes along, whenever that is. And it's a lot of surrendering and letting go and this evolution of yourself and trust and faith and flow. And the work is never done as well. You can't go, oh, I'm healed and that's it. It's like learning. Like whenever you stop learning, you stop growing. And it's just when you're in the flow of that, I would rather be in this space than getting annoyed about little insignificant things. Like I was just saying before about getting annoyed arguing about bananas in the supermarket when I'm not even in that space anymore. But it's never about the bananas. So I had a client end of last year who's allowed me to share the story of just how this kind of works, of where this person had been working with me for nigh on 3 months. They're about to finish up, because I get people to intuitively, for however long they require to be with me, because it's about, I'm releasing the heaviness so that you're not pinging off like you can feel like your intuition or your messages are coming from a space, but if they're like heavy and divisive, like division and fear-based, that is that old energy, that's the old wounds, because your intuitive heart-led space is very light and free and loving. And it's clearing that out so that you're in your authenticity and you are in your sacred self and you are empowered to be in that space and following your heart and that truth and that wisdom and the unique gifts that you bring into the world at this time. And so I had this client who had parenting and getting really annoyed because they'd bought a new toothpaste for their kids and the kids were using it. And people tell me these things, like what they're triggered by, and they tell me, and I'm sitting there and I deeply read the energy of what's going on, but I see way beyond the story. And I'm channeling this beautiful energy through to hold and support them in a compassionate way, because it's where there's no judgment that you can be vulnerable and go to those depths. And I have no judgment, and I sit in unconditional love. So I was just sitting there, and I just lovingly interrupted and just stopped this person for a moment, and they stopped and they were like, "It's not about the toothpaste, is it?" I was like, "No." And we went back to past life, Roman times, where there was stuck energy. I did some talking cues. They led the work, releasing the epiphanies that came through about how that was they're playing out in their now life, the lightness that comes, like it's just like a heavy cloak that comes off, or wherever that stuck energy was in the body. And then we were just laughing afterwards, going, it wasn't about the toothpaste.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what happens.
The trigger. And that trigger. And we all have these different triggers. Like I could probably think of one, and like I think like you just mentioned too, is the most common trigger I see in people is somebody gets annoyed by a very particular thing you say or the way they say it, and suddenly you snap. You may not snap physically, but something just and like you just can't stand it. I don't know. Not like scratching your fingernails down a blackboard or something like that, but it almost feels like that.
Yeah.
But when you think about it, it doesn't really. It's like, what triggered that? Was that a past life? Was it some sort of memory? What trauma? But now discuss a little bit about the triggers and the shadow work that.
So that's in that space when there's the reaction, because it's like you're reacting in an adult-sized body, but it's never about the thing, and it's the energy that you're having a reminder of that stuck energy. And childhood, from what I've explored and what feels true to me, is that childhood is very much the catalyst, like where we've come from, where we've come into this space, is we've come here to clear this ancestral wounding and trauma. And there's karma, there's our own karma, but there's also collective karma that we're clearing at the same time, and also past life trauma as well. And childhood, and where we, like, for me, it's where you've chosen to come into, and the families and the experiences that you've chosen to really release yourself from those spaces. It's all of that catalyst. And so going into, a lot of people fear going into those spaces, or they put it in the cupboard, that wonderful cupboard that you put all the crap in. And then you shut it. And then after a while, it is really full, and you go and put a teeny tiny little box, a little spork in there, and everything falls out, and you've got to inspect it. And the consciousness and what we're currently experiencing right now is people can't keep stuffing things into that cupboard anymore, because it is falling out. And this is where these big meltdowns come, because everything's compounded, because we've been taught, like, and it's no fault of our parents, because this is the consciousness and awareness. Like, my grandparents were in a war generation where you had, like, for their well-being, they shoved everything away. And emotions weren't dealt with and everything. And so that's what trickled down. And we can't operate like that, because these heavy emotions are coming up to go. So collectively, there's no fault or blame here, because everyone was doing the best they could at the time. But when we were small, most of us were in spaces where we weren't seen or heard or validated for our emotions as they were rising, for our experiences, and a lot of stuff was projected or cut off, so that we weren't in our full experience of the emotion. So it could be you're riding your bike, you fall over, and you hurt your knee, and you just get told, get up, be brave, or it's not that bad, you've done worse, or why are you crying, or stop crying, or just whatever the reaction is, because that person hasn't been supported through their emotions. And so it shuts down, it internalizes, it comes out as the reaction later on, or it comes out in a physical pain, and it compounds, like more stuff attaches to it until you actually address that. Because we didn't have the safe space to be seen and held, when we go through these emotional experiences, we get scared because we were invalidated the first time around, and we didn't see the whole wave of that emotion, that it's safe to actually go through that, or it was wronged as well, or stripped away or shut down. So we keep adopting that until we actually hold space for that. And we have to learn, like retrain and reparent and love those parts of the parts that were shown to be unlovable. And really hold space and validate those. And when you do, when you come into that space of loving all of those parts of you, and when they're validated and that energy is let go of, the way you see the world changes. The things that you're getting like angry at before have stopped. A lot of unresolved wounding comes up in relationship with another, because it's a reminder. It could be with your kids, it could be with your partner, husband, wife, could be with a colleague, whoever it is. It's all a catalyst, and it's all an opportunity. And so you move beyond blaming that other factor, and you're seeing that this is an opportunity for you. And then you end up start loving that person for however they met you, because they've supported you to release that as a reminder.
Yeah. And people they'd have to admit to it, then submit to it, and then release.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, at what point would somebody, what would somebody be going through to get to that point, as an example, and go, oh, man, I need to get a hold of Nikki. I gotta get a hold of her. What would be an example?
Do you know what? Because there's so much melting down going on at the moment, and it's the energies that are coming in that are physically shifting through this body, and people are like, who the heck am I without this? I don't know who I am. What's my purpose? What am I doing here? Why am I doing this? And they're freaking out, and they're re-grabbing and holding on to the heaviness because they don't know who they are without it, because we've been taught to trust outside of ourselves instead of listening to ourselves. And ideally, it's that ping in your heart. Some people are triggered by me, and I'm okay with that because it's not about me. It's not actually about me. And they realize, and I'll compassionately hold space, and they're like, oh, it wasn't about, I'm like, yeah, but I'll hold space for you. But it's when people, they feel that connection, they feel something. And it's better to get to the point we serve ourselves last. And it's when we're drowning that we're like, finally like, oh, I'm going to ask for help now.
Yeah.
And
when
it's
our head's
before
just about
that
underwater.
Point. Yeah. Yes. And you're so submerged that it's so hard to see anything but it's that little heart murmur going, oh my gosh, there's something about her. And whether it's a resonance or you're like, oh, what? There is something there. And it's people who are ready to show up in that authentic space and let go of those things that they've been wearing that they're not. And this beautiful analogy has come through in the last few months. It's like being in the middle of summer on the beach wearing 100 coats. Now, these coats have been handed down from your ancestors. They've been gifted to you from all sorts of spaces. And you're blaming the sun for being hot, but you're not taking off the coats. So it's when people are ready to show up and do the stuff themselves. Because if you're going to healers all the time to fix you, you're disempowering yourself by not doing. You're the one responsible, because you're the one that's got to make a choice to do that and to pave that new path forward.
Yeah. And anybody can, and they can do this remotely with you, correct? They can.
Oh yeah, I do this online. I do distance healings and clearings around the world, and that's a donation, and people pay, and I tap into their energy because I've got permission in there, and I send a little message about what's happened. They're like, whoa, I actually felt that. It's like, it's energy. It doesn't matter where you are in the world.
Exactly. Yeah. Energy and spirit there's no space time for that. It's everywhere. And everything that people need to know about you is in your, actually it's scrolling down there at the bottom there at Nickie-Jean.com.
In my website. Yeah. And it's very much like this, for me, this is spirituality, like the shadows and the triggers, because there is this ascension space of, you go through, like, I've been some really big grief, and then I was in the opportunity, and then I'm like happy plaster everything, and it's called spiritual bypassing. I'm like, yeah, just love and light everything. But underneath there's some resentment and bubbling away, and it's like a boil with the core, and it's like, you've got to get to the core. and you can't happy plaster over everything, because that resentment and things that are wanting to come up and go. And so honoring all parts of yourself, because then you will be operating from a different vibrational space.
Yeah.
Now,
we were mentioning too about like emotional, like we're getting all this emotional releases all over the world. And over the last couple years, especially nowadays, I'm noticing it. I'm sure you're noticing it. Just people are like really on a short trigger. It's on a really short trigger. And I don't know if it's like we're all in a group, like a giant group past life. Like we're all revisiting Atlantis and the destruction of Atlantis, and everything has come caving down on us, and we're all remembering it. And it's kind of like, that's almost what it feels like oh my God, or Pompeii, the destruction of Pompeii, and a volcanoes going off. It's like we're all in this together, and we're all just being triggered, or it's a cosmic energy, and there's something that is changing in the universe, and I was talking about this today from somebody. Have you noticed it's getting brighter outside? It's getting much brighter outside. And if anybody's watching and hearing this, I'm sure you've noticed it. You just haven't said it or asked. And it's like, everybody's just on a short fuse. And have you been working with anybody on this lately, that just an uptick of short triggers?
So short triggers. When I'm with someone, short triggers as opposed to long ones. So when I'm working with someone, I hold space for them, but I'll gently guide them to, like, if they go off on a story or a tangent, or I'll gently guide them back. And it's a reconnection with the body, and reconnection, because in trauma, stuck energy, we disconnect. And we're off way over here, and it's bringing back to presence. But what I do notice, because of all of the stuff that I've cleared, and I've never finished, I love growing. So I'm always like letting go of stuff. I'm very conscious of how I let go of stuff. And I teach people that too, like in courses, of whose energy you're actually wearing, because there's so much collective stuff going at the moment. If you have an open emotional center and you're an empath, you could be recycling that out into the world. And I call it projectionile vomiting, like you're projecting all over somebody else. Oftentimes, and I've done that before, so there's no judgment, like of where you're like, blah, and then you realize you're like, oh, that's actually for me. You're like, oh, now I can see it. Do I want to own that? So I used to, like a few years ago, I used to be like in that space because I was unaware. And it's, I'm clearing out my energy. I know what's my energy. I know what's other people's energy. That's the other thing where people can get stuck too, is they can be recycling other people's energy without clearing out their field. And that can feel gnarly as well. So I know when I feel the collective uprising of like, whoa, there's some grief going on, or whoa, there's some anger going on. And I know it's not mine. I know it's for the wisdom instead of hating on it. And so when I see things, like if there's short fusing around me, it'll be for the awareness, because when you move through stuff and you're in a space of you're seeing a lot of that within another person, often it is a reflection of something's going on deep within you, because you'll feel it. So if you're triggered, that is your inner work to do. If you're all happy up in your grill and someone else is triggered, that is their work to do, that is their opportunity, and that is their responsibility. If you're triggered by someone else's trigger, that is both of your work to do. So if I'm noticing short fusing going on around me, if there's a lot of it, there's something in there for me. If I'm noticing it and I've got no ping in me whatsoever and I'm still happy, I'm like, this is for the awareness. And also a little kudos to perhaps where I've been in the past, or maybe there's some wisdom for me in that space as well. There are, because I don't connect with things that are around a lot of that, like really like energy. I spend a lot of time in nature. I intentionally go to the supermarket when I feel aligned to, and the supermarket that I choose to. Like, I'm very intentional about the moves that I make, that I generally don't come across that because it's not within me as well to reflect that back. But I know, I feel, and I know a lot of that is going on. And the short fusing, like the anger, behind the anger there's deep sadness and or fear. And that's the real vulnerable stuff that people don't know how to see, and it will come out in these bursts as well. So when someone is angry, I will, and I have done this in the past without being aware, that I'll feel fear or sadness, but it's actually theirs. And when I reflect it back to them, they're like, oh, why are you doing that? And it's like a reflection of their stuff coming back for them to see.
It's almost like a dose of ayahuasca. If you're familiar. Did I freeze?
You have frozen.
That's weird.
You just got a little bit like, you're very in a very thoughtful pose, which is amazing.
What? Oh wait, hold on. Weird. Hello.
Hi.
I lost my camera.
You mentioned ayahuasca, and then the energy changed.
Something weird just happened. If you can hear me, I can't hear you, and something. Well, we're at the end of, shortly at the end of the broadcast, but I can't even hear myself. See, maybe this is the reason I gotta get away from live broadcasts. Do all the pre-recording. What happened to my camera?
This is authenticity in its finest.
There we go. Well, let's see, I lost audio now.
I can hear you.
Yeah, check. Yeah, I completely lost. Like this is I'm trying to restore having some sort of a system. Can you hear me? Nod. That's weird. I can't hear you. I cannot hear you at all. All audio kind of dropped off weirdly. What happened? Let me see if I can. Yeah, maybe the ayahuasca thing completely set it off. Oh, Mother Ayahuasca. I don't. Yeah, it's like I completely lost my camera and my audio. I can't even hear the show. Well, I tell you what. We're gonna cut it short because it doesn't seem like I can actually restore anything. I don't know. I'm not sure where I'm at. So I tell you what. I can't hear you, but if you can hear me and everybody out there can hear me, we'll catch up. We'll catch up at a later time somewhere on social media and stuff like that, Nikki. And other than that, we made it right on time. I mean, what's 30 minutes? Don't say ayahuasca on the air. But since I can't hear anything, Nikki, I appreciate it. Thank you for being on the show tonight. And
Thank you for having me.
welcome back anytime. You know how to book the show and stuff like that. So everybody, I appreciate it for tuning in. Thank you for watching Conscious Radio Network's the weekly seance, and stay tuned next week. And yeah, hopefully it doesn't happen again. I have to do some tests before that. So anyway, you all have a good night, good evening, and